I think I didn't do anything wrong, just made a harmless joke about sharing a room with my ex at a family reunion. But when my husband refused and called it inappropriate, I said he was insecure. Now legal papers have arrived at the door, and everyone's acting like I'm the villain. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The dining room buzzed with comfortable conversation as our families gathered for Sunday dinner. I was feeling particularly witty that evening, wine glass in hand, surrounded by my sister Carla, my best friend Melissa, and Mark's mother, Irene. 7-year-old Hazel colored quietly at the kids' table while the adults shared stories and laughter. So, the family reunion is next month, I announced, swirling my wine. Guess who's going to be there? My ex, Danny. Apparently, the hotel's overbooked, and Mom suggested we might need to share rooms to save money. I paused for effect, watching Mark's face from across the table. I told her, sure, Danny and I can bunk together. We're both adults, right? The reaction was immediate. Carla burst into laughter. Oh my God, Lysandra, you're terrible. Melissa nearly choked on her drink, grinning widely. But Mark's fork stopped halfway to his mouth, his expression darkening. That's not funny, Mark said quietly, setting down his utensil. You can't be serious about sharing a room with your ex-boyfriend. I rolled my eyes dramatically. Oh, come on, Mark. It's just practical. We dated in college. That was over a decade ago. What's the big deal? The big deal is you're married, Mark replied, his voice tense but controlled. To me. Carla jumped in immediately. Mark, seriously, you're being ridiculous. They're just saving money. It's not like anything's going to happen. Exactly, I laughed, gesturing around the table. See, everyone else gets it. You're being incredibly insecure right now. Mark's jaw tightened. I'm not insecure. I'm setting reasonable boundaries in our marriage. Reasonable, I scoffed. More like controlling. Danny and I are friends, period. The fact that you can't trust me says way more about you than it does about me. Melissa nodded enthusiastically. Mark, honey, you've got to lighten up. Lysandra's just being practical. It's 2024. People can be mature about these things. I watched Mark's face flush red as the women at the table aligned against him. Even my father Greg shifted uncomfortably, clearly wanting to stay out of it. Only Irene remained silent, her lips pressed into a thin line. Why does Daddy look sad? Hazel's small voice cut through the tension. Daddy's just being silly, sweetheart, I said quickly, shooting Mark a warning look. He'll get over it. Mark stood abruptly. I need some air. As he walked away, I shook my head and addressed the table. I swear, sometimes I feel like I'm married to a child. The comment earned more supportive murmurs from Carla and Melissa. Later, as everyone was leaving, I posted a group selfie from dinner on social media. Mark was visible in the background, scowling and clearly unhappy. Within minutes, Melissa had commented, Poor Mark can't take a joke. That night, I found Mark in our bedroom, quietly packing an overnight bag. Where are you going? I asked. My mother's, he replied without looking up. I need to think. You're seriously leaving over this? Mark, you're proving my point about being insecure. He zipped the bag and finally met my eyes. Maybe I am insecure, Lysandra, or maybe I just know my wife better than she thinks I do. The next morning at the office, I was still fuming about Mark's dramatic exit. My insurance claims desk felt like a refuge compared to the tension at home. Dylan Cortez from IT support knocked on my cubicle wall, holding 2 coffee cups. Rough night? He asked with that crooked smile that always made my stomach flutter. You could say that, I sighed, accepting the coffee gratefully. Mark's being impossible. Want to talk about it over lunch? Dylan's fingers brushed mine as he handed me the cup, sending a familiar thrill through me. Our lunch meetings had become a regular thing over the past few months. What started as innocent workplace friendship had evolved into something more exciting. Stolen glances, lingering touches, text messages that made me feel alive again. Dylan was everything Mark wasn't: spontaneous, flirtatious, undemanding. "I'd love to," I replied, already feeling better. My phone buzzed with a text from Mark. "Working late again tonight? Third time this week." I quickly typed back, "Big case. Need the overtime for Hazel's school expenses. You know how it is." Dylan read over my shoulder and smirked. "Working overtime, huh?" "Well, technically we are working," I laughed, "just not on insurance claims." That afternoon, Dylan and I spent 2 hours at a quiet cafe across town, talking and laughing like teenagers. He made me feel interesting, desired, appreciated, all the things Mark had stopped making me feel years ago. "You deserve better than someone who doesn't trust you," Dylan said, his hand covering mine across the table. "I know," I sighed. "Sometimes I wonder why I stay." When I returned to the office, there was a beautiful bouquet of mixed flowers on my desk. The card was unsigned, just a simple "thinking of you." My heart raced as I looked around, catching Dylan's eye from across the office. He winked. Melissa appeared at my shoulder. "Ooh, secret admirer?" "Just a grateful client," I said quickly, but I was grinning. That evening, Mark's mother called to say she was picking up Hazel for dinner. "You're never home anymore," Irene said pointedly. "The child needs consistency." "I'm working hard for our family," I replied defensively. "Some of us have to." Later, Carla texted, "How's the Cold War with Mark? Girl, life's too short. Do what makes you happy." I was in the kitchen, arranging Dylan's flowers in a vase, when Mark came home. I quickly tossed the delivery slip in the trash. "Nice flowers," he said quietly. "Client sent them. Big settlement case I closed today." Mark nodded but didn't seem convinced. Later that night, I caught him going through the trash, pulling out the delivery slip. When he saw me watching, he just folded it carefully and put it in his pocket. "Mark, what are you doing?" "Nothing," he said. "Just cleaning up." But something in his eyes told me he was doing much more than that. Girls' night at our usual cafe was exactly what I needed. Melissa, Carla, and 2 other friends had claimed our regular corner table, and the wine was flowing freely. I was regaling them with stories about Mark's latest controlling behavior. "So now he's questioning every late night at work," I laughed, taking another sip of my Chardonnay. "Like I'm some teenager who needs a curfew." "That's so toxic," Melissa agreed. "You're a grown woman with a career. You shouldn't have to account for every minute of your day." Carla nodded emphatically. "I've been telling her for years, Mark's got serious control issues. Remember when they were dating? He used to get weird about her talking to other guys." "He's just not man enough to trust his wife," I said, feeling bold from the wine and the supportive audience. "Honestly, sometimes I wonder what I saw in him. He's so boring, predictable, no spontaneity, no passion." The table erupted in sympathetic murmurs and supportive comments. I was feeling vindicated, finally among people who understood me, when I noticed a familiar figure standing near the cafe entrance. Mark. Our eyes met across the crowded room. His face was pale, and I realized with a sinking stomach that he'd heard at least part of what I'd said. He'd probably come looking for me, maybe to apologize or try to work things out. Instead of acknowledging him, I turned back to the table and spoke louder. The worst part is how he tries to make me feel guilty for having a life outside our house. God forbid I have friends or interests that don't revolve around him. Melissa, spotting Mark, pulled out her phone and snapped a photo as he turned to leave. "Can't handle the heat," she posted immediately to her Instagram story. I watched Mark's shoulders slump as he walked away, and for a moment I felt a pang of something. Guilt? Regret? But Carla's voice pulled me back. "Good riddance. You deserve so much better, Liz." The next day, I received an email from Hazel's teacher, Mrs. Patterson. I wanted to reach out regarding some changes in Hazel's behavior and mood lately. She seems withdrawn and has mentioned that Mommy and Daddy are always angry. Could we schedule a brief conference to discuss how to support her during this time? I deleted the email. Hazel was fine, kids were resilient, and Mrs. Patterson was being overly dramatic. That evening, Mark was unusually quiet during dinner. Hazel picked at her food, glancing nervously between us. "How was school today, sweetheart?" I asked brightly, trying to maintain normalcy. "Okay," Hazel mumbled. Mrs. Patterson asked if everything was okay at home. Mark and I exchanged glances. "Everything's perfect, baby," I assured her. "Teachers just worry sometimes." Later, after Hazel was in bed, I found Mark in his home office, laptop open. The banking app was displayed on the screen. He'd been checking our accounts, looking at transaction histories. "Find anything interesting?" I asked sarcastically. Mark closed the laptop slowly. "Just trying to understand where all the overtime money is going. Funny thing, your payroll deposits don't match the hours you claim to be working." My heart pounded, but I forced a laugh. "Are you seriously auditing me now? This is a new low, even for you." "Is it Lysandra? Because from where I'm sitting, nothing adds up anymore." The tension in our house had become suffocating. Mark barely spoke to me, communicating only about Hazel's schedule and household necessities. I threw myself deeper into my work relationship with Dylan, meeting him for increasingly bold lunch dates and after-work drinks. "He's completely paranoid now," I told Dylan, as we sat in his car outside a restaurant across town. "Checking bank statements, asking about every text message, it's exhausting." Dylan's hand found my thigh. "Maybe it's time to make a clean break. You're not happy, Lys. Anyone can see that." "It's complicated. There's Hazel to think about. Kids adapt. She'd probably be happier with parents who aren't constantly fighting." That evening, I came home to find Mark waiting in the living room, his expression serious. "We need to talk," he said. "I'm tired, Mark. Can't this wait?" "No, it can't." His voice was firm in a way I hadn't heard before. "I need you to be honest with me. Are you having an affair?" The direct question caught me off guard. "Are you insane? How can you even ask me that?" "Because my wife disappears for hours, lies about working overtime, receives flowers from anonymous admirers, and publicly humiliates me to her friends. What am I supposed to think?" "You're supposed to trust me," I shot back. "You're supposed to believe in our marriage instead of creating conspiracy theories." "Mommy, Daddy," Hazel's voice came from the top of the stairs. She was in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed rabbit, eyes wide with fear. "Go back to bed, sweetheart," Mark said gently. "Everything's okay." "You're scaring her," I hissed at Mark. "This paranoia of yours is affecting our daughter." "My paranoia?" Mark's voice rose slightly before he caught himself, glancing toward the stairs. "Lysandra, I found the restaurant receipts. 2 lunches, 2 dinners, always for 2 people, during your supposed work hours. I called your office. You've been taking extended lunch breaks for months." My mind raced. "Those are client meetings. I told you about the big cases." "Stop." Mark's voice was quiet but final. "Just stop lying to me." I felt cornered, desperate. "You know what? Maybe I've been spending time with other people. Maybe I need friends who don't interrogate me and make me feel like a criminal in my own home." "Friends?" Mark's laugh was bitter. "Is that what we're calling it?" "You're impossible." I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. "I can't do this anymore tonight." "Where are you going?" "Somewhere I don't have to justify my existence." I slammed the door and drove to Carla's apartment, where I spent the night ranting about Mark's controlling behavior while she poured wine and assured me I deserved better. When I returned home the next morning, Mark was gone. Hazel was at school, and Irene was in the kitchen, cleaning up breakfast dishes. "Where's Mark?" I asked. "He had some errands to run," Irene replied coolly, not meeting my eyes. It wasn't until that evening that I found the letter on the kitchen table. It was addressed to me from a law firm I didn't recognize. Inside was a formal notice. Mark was filing for legal separation and requesting mediation for custody arrangements. My hands shook as I read the document. At the bottom, in Mark's careful handwriting, was a note. "I tried to save our marriage, Lysandra, but I won't let you destroy our daughter's sense of security anymore. We'll settle this properly, through the appropriate channels." The mediation office was sterile and intimidating, with its beige walls and formal conference table. Mark sat across from me, flanked by his lawyer and his mother, who had insisted on being present as a character witness. My own lawyer, hastily hired, shuffled through papers nervously. Hazel sat in a corner with a coloring book, headphones on, supposedly listening to children's music while the adults discussed her future. "Let's begin with the evidence Mr. Veer has compiled," the mediator said, opening a thick folder. I watched in growing horror as Mark's lawyer methodically presented their case. Screenshots of deleted text messages between Dylan and me, recovered by a digital forensics expert. Restaurant receipts matched against my work schedule, proving I'd lied about overtime. Hotel bookings, credit card statements showing purchases I couldn't explain away. "This is a violation of my privacy," I protested. "You can't just spy on your wife." "Mrs. Veer," the mediator said calmly, "these records were obtained legally. Your husband had legitimate concerns about marital assets being used inappropriately." My lawyer leaned over and whispered urgently, "Lysandra, they have everything. We need to focus on damage control." But I wasn't ready to give up. "This whole thing is ridiculous. So what if I had a friendship with a coworker? Mark's jealousy doesn't justify this nuclear option." Mark spoke for the first time since we'd sat down. "It wasn't friendship, Lysandra. And it wasn't just the affair." "What's that supposed to mean?" Mark's lawyer slid another document across the table. "Character witnesses, statements from your daughter's teacher about concerning behavioral changes, testimony from neighbors about loud arguments, documentation of your public disparagement of your husband, including social media posts and witness accounts from the cafe incident." I felt the walls closing in. "I never meant for any of this to hurt Hazel. You're the one making this public, Mark. You're the one dragging our family through legal proceedings." "I'm protecting our daughter," Mark replied quietly, "from the instability and dishonesty that have taken over our home." The mediator turned to me. "Mrs. Veer, would you like to respond to any of these allegations?" I looked around the room, at Mark's calm, resolved face, at Irene's disappointed expression, at my own lawyer's defeated posture. In the corner, Hazel looked up from her coloring book, and our eyes met. She looked so small, so confused. "I want to call Dylan Cortez," I said desperately. "He'll explain that this wasn't what it looks like." Mark's lawyer consulted his notes. "We attempted to contact Mr. Cortez for a statement. He declined to participate in these proceedings and has requested no further contact from any party." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Dylan, who had whispered sweet words about my deserving better, who had encouraged me to question my marriage, had abandoned me the moment things got serious. "The custody recommendation," the mediator continued, "based on stability of home environment, primary caregiver responsibilities, and the child's best interests, is as follows." As the terms were read aloud, Mark getting primary custody, supervised visits for me until I completed counseling, a division of assets that heavily favored him due to my breach of marital trust, I realized how completely I had miscalculated. Carla, who had been sitting behind me, quietly gathered her purse and slipped out of the room. Even my own sister was distancing herself now that the full scope of my deception was laid bare. The final mediation session took place 3 weeks later. The interim period had been a nightmare of legal paperwork, mandated counseling sessions, and the dawning realization that my actions had consequences I'd never anticipated. I'd moved into a small apartment across town. Hazel visited on weekends, but our conversations were stilted and sad. She asked repeatedly when she could go home to Daddy and Grandma Irene, who had moved in temporarily to provide stability. "The custody arrangement is now finalized," the mediator announced, sliding the official documents across the table. Mr. Veer will have primary physical custody. Mrs. Veer will have supervised visitation every other weekend, progressing to unsupervised visits after completion of counseling and demonstration of stable housing and employment. I tried one last desperate gambit. This is going to traumatize Hazel, splitting up her family, keeping her from her mother. Mrs. Veer, the mediator interrupted firmly. The evidence clearly shows that the family unit was already compromised by your choices. These arrangements prioritize the child's need for stability and honest communication. Mark finally looked directly at me. I never wanted it to come to this, Lysandra. I gave you so many chances to just be honest. I was trying to protect everyone, I said weakly. You were protecting yourself, he replied. There's a difference. As we prepared to leave, Hazel ran to Mark without hesitation, wrapping her arms around his waist. Irene gathered her things and gave her son a proud, supportive hug. Even my father, who had attended this final session, approached Mark to shake his hand. You're a good man, Mark, I heard Dad say quietly. I'm sorry it came to this. Carla avoided eye contact with me entirely, mumbling something about having to get back to work as she hurried toward the exit. I was left standing alone in the mediation room, holding a folder full of legal documents that detailed the destruction of my family, the supervised visitation schedule, the asset division that left me with a fraction of what I'd expected, the requirement for continued counseling and anger management classes. My phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. How did it go? Still on for drinks later? I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. The friends who had encouraged my deception and laughed at Mark's insecurity were nowhere to be found now that the real consequences had arrived. Walking to my car in the parking garage, I passed Mark loading Hazel's car seat into his vehicle. She was chattering happily about something that had happened at school, and he was listening with the patient attention I'd once found boring. Now I understood what I'd lost, not just a marriage or a house or financial security, but the quiet dignity of a man who had loved me enough to try to save our family, even when I was actively destroying it. The legal papers in my folder were more than just custody arrangements and asset divisions. They were a record of choices, his choice to respond to betrayal with lawful action rather than revenge, and my choice to prioritize momentary excitement over lasting commitment. As I drove away from the mediation office for the final time, I realized that Mark had never been insecure at all. He had simply recognized what I was too selfish to see, that some jokes aren't funny, some boundaries matter, and some consequences can't be laughed away. The room I'd joked about sharing with my ex seemed trivial now compared to the home I'd lost through my own deception. And the man I'd called insecure had proven to be the most secure person in the entire situation. Secure enough in his own worth to demand honesty, and strong enough to protect our daughter when I wouldn't protect our family. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.